Hey everyone, today we're going to have a bit of a chat to you about tubes, also known as inflatables, towables, whatever you want to call them. They are a ton of fun out in the water. Every family and every boat needs to have at least one of them, and we have over 100 models of tubes in store here, and it is a little bit daunting when it comes to what is going to be the best one for me and my family. So we're going to run you through the different models, shapes and sizes of tubes so you can get on the best one for this summer. Now, there's a million different styles, models and shapes of tubes out there, so how do we decide what one is the best for you? First of all, we ask how many people do we want to put on this tube. So we do 1, 2 and 3 plus person tubes. The best thing about when you buy a tube from us is that all of our tubes that are 2 person and above come with a heavy duty 840 denier nylon cover. So that makes it super durable, ready to take on absolutely anything you throw at it out on the water. Once we decide how many people we want to put on the tube, we then look at the style of tube that we're going to go with. The 3 main styles of tubes that we have are traditional flat deck tubes, wing styles, and then sit in or sit on tubes, so like your couch style tubes. Now, each one of these tubes has a benefit for what you want to do and what you want to get out of the tube, so we're going to run through the pros and cons of each style of tube so that you land on the right one this summer. Now, first off, we have our traditional flat deck style tubes. These are fantastic, they're nice and big, and they are very durable. In terms of sizing, we're looking at 2 to 3 plus, so you can chuck a bunch of people on them, have a great time, as well as dial it down and only have 1 or 2 riders on them. So they make for a very versatile tube, they're really durable. As I said before, all of our 2 and 3 person tubes have an 840 denier nylon cover, so super heavy duty. These tubes are fantastic for absolutely anyone you want to chuck on. You're lying down on them, so they do require a bit of arm strength. So if you want something a little bit cruisier and easier to ride, we're going to have a look at our sit in or sit down tube. So it's like a couch style. You're sat down on the tube and you're nice and protected and held in by the tube. So these are fantastic for younger people and older riders that just want to cruise around and have an absolute blast on the water without too much damage onto the body. Some of these have reversible tow points, so that's a fantastic feature with our sit down tubes. You can tow them like a couch, feet facing forwards, or you can tow them kneeling down and facing forwards that way, so you're holding on to the backrest of the couch. This makes a little bit more fun, so if the kids are growing up and you don't want to fully upgrade to a new style of tube, you can go to something like that has the reversible tow points. The kneeling down or chariot position is a bunch of fun. You can still throw the kids off nice and easy without going too hard. Now, finally, we have our wing style tubes. These are the most amount of fun that you're going to have on the water. They are going to be the fastest style tube out on the water. Now, obviously, you're up to the driver's peril in terms of how fast you end up going. So remember, we want to keep it nice and slow, staying within a very, very reasonable distance from the bank. We don't want to go too close to the bank as the tube is going to accelerate when you put them into a whip. So a wing style tube is going to skim across the top of the water a little bit quicker than your couch style or your traditional flat deck. This is due to the turned up wings on the outside, allowing for less drag but also equal amount of surface area to lie on as a traditional flat deck. These come in 1, 2 and 3 plus in terms of size, making it a very, very fun tube. Pretty much that will do absolutely everything that you want on the water. Now, in terms of covers, I just touched on before, and all of our 2 plus tubes have that 840 denier nylon cover, so really heavy duty, but some of our other tubes have a soft top neoprene cover. This stops that nylon rash and burn that you can sometimes get over your elbows and knees, so it's a lot more comfortable to ride on. A lot of our other tubes just have the elbows and knees in that neoprene cover and the rest of it in nylon. Still that same 840 denier nylon, so really heavy duty. And then this is going to allow you to have the best time out in the water, be able to tube all day without that nasty nylon rash. Now, we've talked about how many people we want to put on a tube, the different styles and shapes of these tubes and the features that come along with. Now we need to talk about tube ropes. This is the most important part about tubing, is the connection between the boat and the rider. Too thin of a rope and you could lead to snapping the rope if you have the tube overloaded. Now this can cause damage to the boat, the rider, or the tube, and we don't want that. So when we're selecting a tube rope for your tube, we want to look about how many people we have on it and correlate that to how thick the rope is. So we have 1-person tube ropes, 2 to 3-person tube ropes, 3 and 4, and 6+. Now, a bungee tube rope is a fantastic option if you are going that 3-person plus, as it has the bungee section built into the rope, and that will help alleviate some of the pressure when you do put those bigger tubes into whips. When that rope goes tight, the bungee will shock absorb a lot of that energy, so you're going to have a smoother ride on the tube. It's going to be better wearing on the toe point of your jet ski or boat, as well as the toe point on the front of the tube. So they're fantastic. We also sell just the bungee extension by itself. This allows to put it on your existing tube rope. That's going to make it a lot easier and a lot smoother to ride. Now, in terms of attachment points to your boat and jet ski, never tow off your towel when you're towing off the boat. You want to tow from the lowest, furthest part to the back of the boat as you can. So a lot of the times that's the little cleat towards the back of the boat. And that's the same with a jet ski. But with a jet ski, it's a little bit harder. You've got to pull the rope through itself every single time. To stop that, we sell these little jet ski quick extensions. Now this is going to allow to keep this on the back of the jet ski on itself like that, and then it has the quick connector on the front here. So this is exactly as what you've got on the front of your tube. You thread the rope through itself and then back on itself, and you're right to go. So we've covered off towing behind an inboard or a V-drive boat, a jet ski, and now outboard motors. Outboards, we have outboard bridles. So they come in a few different lengths. I've got the 2.8 meter here. They go all the way up to 5 meters for your wider boats with bigger engines. What it is 2.8 meters of rope with a loop end on each end. So it goes to your cleats or to your rings at the back of the boat. Then comes together with a swivel. So this swivel pulley goes along the rope. So when it's pulled by the tube, it's not going to pull the left or the right of the boat too much. It's going to keep equal pull at the center of the boat. Now from the pulley, you have a rope float and then a quick connect. So the rope just through the hole, back on itself, and away you go. Moving on to inflation. This is really important to make sure your tube stays in good nick every summer. So when we're inflating our tubes, we want to make sure we're using a volume air pump. So such as a double action hand pump or a 12 volt volume air pump that we sell. If you're using a compressor, you do run the risk of overinflating and popping your tube. So just be wary of that when you are using a compressor. When we're using a volume air pump, we want to make sure these tubes are super inflated, so you should be able to stand on them without it depressing around your feet too much. So the good little trick is when you're blowing up bigger tubes, use your volume air pump, get it as tight as possible as you can, and then when you think you've got it topped up, use a double action hand pump to make sure you get the last little bit out of that tube to make sure it's nice and inflated and it's not going to drag too much on the water. Now, when we first get our tube out of the box, to stop the deflation of a tube, we want to unscrew our valve and screw it all the way back in, so to make sure it's not cross-threaded. Sometimes these can cross-thread because it's just a plastic thread, and that can cause a slow leak in your tube, and that's 90% of what when people come back with a tube saying it's deflated, 90% of the time it is just a cross-threaded valve. So make sure you pull your valve all the way out and thread it all the way back in to make sure it's nice and locked in and secure. Now, if it's a hot day when you're out on the tube, you want to make sure you have it nice and pumped up, throw it in the water for about 2 to 3 minutes, and the cooler water temperature will shrink the tube. It'll take some of the volume out of the tube, looking like that it's deflating. This is not the case, it's just the temperature difference making the tube shrink a little bit. Top the tube up from there. Make sure it's nice and topped up, nice and tight. Go out for your tube, have an absolute ball, and then when you come back in and you're going to take the tube out of the water, make sure you release a little bit of air, as if you put this tube on the bank and the sun's hitting it, the sun will expand the air inside the tube. So you don't want to have a well-inflated tube, leave it in the sun for 5 to 10 minutes, as you will overinflate it and it will pop. Now, we've finished the day with our tubing and we want to pack up. One thing we need to make sure is that we take the valve all the way out Make sure it's all deflated, all the air's out of it, and the tube is dry before folding it up and storing it, as this will cause mold in the cover. You don't want that. It's going to allow the water to potentially seep into the bladder, and we don't want water in the bladder, we just want air in there. So make sure you follow these rules when you go on tubing. All the products that I've talked about today are up on the website, and if you want any questions, don't hesitate to give myself, Gareth or Ryan a call, or come in store to make sure you have the best summer out on the water.